Welcome to Algebra 1. The learning goal for this episode is to learn how to solve absolute value equations. First, some necessary vocabulary. We often want to work with measurements such as distance, where we care how far away something is, but don't particularly care which direction it is. In instances such as this, we care about the absolute value, or size, of the number, not whether it's positive or negative. The absolute value of a number x, written as an x with straight bars on either side of it, is the distance between x and 0 on a number line. For example, the absolute value of 3, written like this, is 3. The absolute value of negative 3, written like this, is also 3. We are going to be working with equations that have absolute value in them. Let's look at some examples. We want to solve this equation. We want to know any value of x that is 9 units away from 0 on the number line. This means that x could be 9, or it could be negative 9. That gives us an idea of how we can solve any absolute value equation. We isolate the expression inside the absolute value bars, then set it equal to both the value and the opposite of the value on the other side of the equation. In this case, that's pretty simple. X equals 9 or x equals negative 9. Those are our solutions. Let's try another example. The absolute value of the quantity y minus 8 is equal to 2. Since my absolute value expression is already isolated, I can set up my two equations. Y minus 8 equals 2, or y minus 8 equals negative 2. Those are both pretty easy to solve, giving us y equals 10 or y equals 6. Like any equation, you can check your solutions by substituting them back into the original equation. In this case, they both work. So therefore, they're both solutions to this equation. Here's another example. This one is a little more complicated. I need to isolate the absolute value expression, so first I add 2 to both sides, and then I divide by 4. Now I can write my two equations. 5x minus 2 equals 2, or 5x minus 2 equals negative 2. We can solve each of those equations to get our two answers, 4/5 and 0. Then we can check our two solutions by substituting them back into our original equation. They both work, so our solutions are 4/5 and 0. Let's try one more example. This one is tricky because it's really easy to write x minus 7 equals 3 and x minus 7 equals negative 3 and then solve them, but we can't do that. Recall that absolute value always has to be either positive or 0. It can never be negative. So this equation has no solution. There is no value of x that will make this true. Now for our guided practice section. We're going to work through some problems together. You do not need to write down these problems. Just step through them with me. At each step, I'm going to prompt you with the question you should be asking yourself. Then I'll pause for about 5 seconds for you to think about it and answer it for yourself. Then I'll show you. So our first question is, what are we trying to do here? What we're trying to do is solve this absolute value equation. How do we do that? First, we have to isolate our absolute value expression. Now what? Now we set up our two equations, c plus 7 equals 18, or c plus 7 equals negative 18. What's next? Now we solve those two equations and get our two solutions. Anything else? Yes, we should check our solutions by substituting them back into our original equation just to make sure we didn't make any mistakes. They both work, so 11 and negative 25 are our solutions. Let's try another one. Again, we're solving an absolute value equation. What do we do first? We isolate our absolute value expression by adding 2 and then dividing by negative 4. What's next? Next, we set up our two equations. Y minus 2 equals 2, or y minus 2 equals negative 2. What's the next step? We solve those equations. Now what? Now we check those solutions in the original equation. They both work, so our solutions are 4 and 0. Let's try one more. What do we do first? Again, we need to isolate the absolute value expression. We did that by adding 2, then dividing by -4. Now what? Now we should realize we have no solution since absolute value can never be negative. We're done. Now for the self-check section. In this section, you're going to physically pause the video as you work out the problem on paper in your notebook. Then you'll press play to check to see how you did. You'll have 5 seconds to pause the video after I stop speaking before I show you the solution. Please pause the video and work out the problem, then press play to check. Here is the solution. Please compare this to your work. Pause the video here if you need more time to compare, then press play again to move to the next problem. Same thing on this problem. Pause the video, write down this problem and work it out in your notebook, then press play to check. Please pause the video now. Here's the solution. Again, pause the video if you need more time to compare this to your work. In closing, let's review our learning goal. We wanted to learn how to solve an absolute value equation. We did that by first isolating the absolute value expression, then creating 2 equations, one where the expression equals the other side of the equation, and one where it equals the opposite of the other side of the equation. But we were careful that if an absolute value expression equaled a negative, we knew it had no solution. We then solved and got our 2 answers. We checked those answers in the original equation just to make sure they worked.